All right, and we are live with the first episode of Cinema Sit Down. So, again, just to kind of go over it a little bit for people that missed my announcement video, this is going to be a new live series that I'm going to be doing, when I find the right subject. And it's where I sit down with somebody that I know and we kind of talk about a subject that we both know and we both like. Whether that's a film or a character from a movie or something like that, we can sit down and have a conversation about it. So today, I am sitting down with channel regular Vash, and we are going to talk about Spider-Man.
Yeah.
I love the enthusiasm.
What? No. I didn't know what else to say because
I know, I'm just being a dick.
Because I didn't know what else to say because I didn't know you were gonna put me on the spotlight for a sec.
Oh no, it was perfect. Don't get me wrong, that was perfect. All right, so I mean, I like I was saying before off the air. I guess we'll probably just start with the first series of movies. So let's just start with the first one because the first Spider-Man is actually probably my favorite film personally out of the bunch. Objectively, it's two, but my personal favorite is one, just because of the personal experiences I had watching it. That was like the first when you go to a theater, like the first time you ever see like a superhero movie and you kind of get that, the hair stands up on your arm kind of feeling. That was what I got when I saw Spider-Man for the first time with Tobey Maguire and Willem Dafoe and James Franco and Kirsten Dunst and all those actors coming together for that one film. Now, I don't know what your feelings are on it.
I kind of wish I had that experience of seeing the movie in the theaters, but I was a 3-year-old little baby at the time, so. But yeah, personally, I'd rate the first Spider-Man movie as like my favorite. Personally, I mean, I know like, you're supposed to say two is your favorite. Well, I mean, yeah, I would say two is better than one, but personally, like for like nostalgia's sake, because I get the most enjoyment out of seeing the first movie because it's really the gateway to the Spider-Man character along with the '90s animated series.
Yeah, that was my first real exposure to him because I didn't really get into the comic books until probably I was like probably like 9 or 10, something like that. So around like 2000, because like my first experience with him was that animated television show in the '90s, and I can't remember the actor's name, something Barnes, who did the voice work
Christopher
for him.
Daniel Barnes.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, he did the voice work for him in that series. And then, that was my only kind of exposure to him. And then the film came out. I'm like, okay, this is a totally different animal. And the only thing I will say that hasn't really aged particularly well for that film is the CGI, unfortunately, because it was 2002. There's a scene that I'm reminded of, which is near the end of the movie when he uses the two flagpoles to jettison himself onto the Brooklyn Bridge, where
Yeah.
it's very bad CGI, even for the time.
I mean, yeah, because I don't think in 2002 it looked really any good because it looks really shoddy at best. But
Well, the weird thing about it is like you look at Jurassic Park from 1993, and that shit still looks pretty crisp. And then you look at Spider-Man in 2002, like, what the fuck happened here?
I forgot what I was going to say. God damn it!
But I like that. I think that honestly, I think Sam Raimi has had the most comic accurate interpretation of Spider-Man to date, at least as far as the
Tom Holland
universe. Because he's 20, playing a 14-year-old.
It's a 15-year-old. Get it right? No, I'm just kidding. Well, yeah, but well, I mean, he still looks youthful. I mean, so I guess nobody would really notice that he's actually 20.
Oh yeah, no, exactly. But as far as Tobey Maguire goes, I don't think we've had a better Peter Parker, honestly.
Yeah.
As somebody just purely the Peter, not the Spider-Man side, but just purely the Peter Parker side. I don't think we've had a better one since Tobey Maguire, and that's all established in that first film, where you believe that guy is the laughing stock of his school. You believe he's a fucking nerd that nobody likes.
Yeah. I mean, he's not like what fucking a male model posing for a magazine like Andrew Garfield.
The lines on that man's forehead, I don't understand how you can pass that guy off as a high school student when he has the forehead of like Bryan Cranston right now.
Yeah, and he's like, when they, and I know we're talking about Amazing Spider-Man over here, but he was like 29, like when he was in the first
Yeah, no,
Amazing Spider-Man
you're
movie,
exactly right. He was 29 when he
playing a
started playing
17
like a.
year old.
But no, it was. I think he was supposed to be 16 in
No,
the movie. I
17.
think 17. That was what it was.
Yeah,
The still, I mean, oh god, like you were just like barely on the cusp of being believable as a high schooler. Then you should have jumped forward like 5 years, like what Raimi did, which is the smart choice. You should have jumped forward after the high school stuff. You should have jumped forward in the next film, and you should have gone into like something a bit more better, where he's at the end of college or something. It's we
but I think
haven't had a Spider-Man movie where he's been out of high school since Spider-Man 3.
yeah, because I mean I think Spider-Man 2 actually takes place 2 years after the first movie. So
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's chronologically. I think it goes in real time. I think Spider-Man 3 is 3 years later,
yeah,
or after two. But
yeah.
sorry, back to the first movie because I'm a dipshit. Um, I
Now
go
we're
off
all
on tangents.
dipshits here.
Yeah. Uh, so the other thing that I really loved about that movie was Willem Dafoe does a great job at playing Norman Osborn, and he does a very good job at kind of. I mean, I know a lot of people have criticized it for being over the top in the performance and stuff like that, especially when he's in
Yeah,
the goblin suit and stuff. But the thing is, you needed a really big contrast between normal kind of reserved Norman Osborn and the Green Goblin. You needed like a total night and day for that to be believable that it's not necessarily Norman Osborn in complete control of himself. And the same thing with the scenes where he's arguing with himself in the mirror.
yeah, because what really kind of drives me insane is that people like whenever they say that the Raimi trilogy is bad, especially the first movie, it's like they say, oh well, it's so campy. I mean, yeah, that's the charm of it. I mean, it's because it actually has a lot of personality. Because Sam Raimi is like the type of director that has like that puts a lot of effort and personality into his films, and not like Mark Webb or John Watts, you know.
Mm. Well, you got to look at also Raimi's earlier work too with Evil Dead and stuff like that. He's very good at establishing characters that are a little zany, but you still love. It's kind of, again, you can look back at like Ash Williams and stuff like that, or Liam Neeson in Darkman or stuff. All those movies are kind of campy and over the top, but you still connect with those characters to some extent.
Yeah, because I mean, people like to. I mean, like a lot of the people that complain about that just seem to pretend like the comics can't be really extremely campy at times, especially the ones from the '60s and shit.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily think you should have a Superman comic where they have pink kryptonite that turns you gay. I think that's a little stupid, but
No,
they know where to trim the fat, so to speak.
what
When they're making the adaptation.
a radioactive gay spider, like he just bites Peter Parker and all of a sudden he turns gay.
He just falls asleep and wakes up, and suddenly he has like a faux hawk, and he has like a rainbow tattooed on his ass for no reason. The
Yeah, and he's crushing on Flash Thompson.
Still remember being the odd man out for liking the Green Goblin outfit. Honestly, I like the Green Goblin armor that he has in that. I've seen the original screen test they had of it. The screen test they did where it was
Yeah,
like
I
an
saw that
actual like
too.
mask and stuff. I thought that looked goofy.
I mean, it looked pretty cool, but at the same time, I understand why they changed it to the suit they went with in the movies because it might look a tad bit off when you see it on film with the mouth moving and
Yeah.
shit like that. And I just realized this like a few couple of weeks ago that you can actually see like purple hues on the costume, like on the top of the Green Goblin's helmet. You can actually see
That
a
could be
little
the
bit of
lighting.
purple.
that might be the lighting from the scene, to be honest, because depending on like the studio lights, maybe. I've never personally noticed that, but that is an interesting thing. Uh, they had those little like nuance type stuff with the costume too, like the whole thing where he could make the eyes like go down so he could actually see through the mask, which was I thought that was kind of eerie. It's like, oh, like that's like a weird aesthetic choice. Like you didn't need it necessarily, but Raimi thought that it was necessary for the scene, and I think that works.
Yeah, and like since you when I watch it in a Blu-ray, you can like you can obviously see Willem Dafoe's mouth moving behind the little black
Oh yeah,
screen.
yeah, no, yeah, the screen there that covers the mouth. Yeah, you can see, especially again in that scene where after he drugs Spider-Man at the Daily Bugle, and he makes the offer to him on the rooftop there. Which, by the way, the line reading there is very good, where you play the hero long enough until you see yourself become the villain. That's like one of the best lines in that entire film.
Yeah.
Or is that Batman?
No, yeah,
Am I
no,
mixing that
that was
up?
Dark. Yeah, I was gonna say you're quoting Dark Knight
God
there.
damn it!
Come on, this is Spider-Man. What are you on about,
No,
Mike?
no, no, no. There's a line like that in that movie. There is one like that in that movie. It's not the same thing. What the fuck line was it?
Yeah, I'm trying to fucking remember. I can't. I mean, I've seen the movie so many times. I should remember it. I don't know why the fuck I'm blanking out right now.
I mean, I'm trying to think. Okay, yeah, it's definitely Dark Knight, but I don't know. Maybe I'm thinking of a different one. Maybe I'm just old because I haven't seen that movie it's been
It's
a
oh
few
yeah,
years.
wait.
I think since I
In,
watched it.
in spite of everything you've done for them, eventually they'll hate you. Why bother?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah. Eventually they'll hate you.
Yeah, I don't know why I was
But
blanking out on that.
but still, it's a great speech, and to be fair, they did it first before Dark Knight, even though Dark Knight was catchier.
Yeah, sit your
The
ass down, Chris Nolan, you pretentious cunt.
I like Chris Nolan. um, the but the thing with that movie too is also they got the supporting cast right, and that's what carried over and made the next film really good, and kind of didn't salvage the third film, but made the third film at least a little bit watchable. Is Kirsten Dunst as Mary Jane, and James Franco as Harry Osborn as his main supporting cast, and then I can't remember the actor and the actress that played Aunt May and Uncle Ben. But
Rosemary
the thing
Harris.
is like there. Okay, that's who played Aunt May. I can't remember who played Uncle Ben, but
Cliff Robertson.
the Cliff Robertson. Okay, but that's the thing is like he kind of like I prefer to be honest, if we're going with Uncle Ben's, I kind of prefer Martin Sheen a little bit.
Really, because
Because
Martin Sheen seemed like a dickhead to me.
he seemed like he was a little bit of a dickhead. He was a little bit of a dickhead, but it seemed like he was just kind of like an old guy that was dealing with a high schooler that he shouldn't have to deal with. So I kind of understand why he was a bit pissed, but for whatever reason, like the Uncle Ben from the original series, from the Raimi films, just seems like he seems very two dimensional. Like he seems like he's only there as a plot MacGuffin for the motivation for Peter Parker later because of the murder. He really, for whatever reason, he doesn't seem like a very fleshed out character to me.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of disagree. 'Cause, I mean, I liked Cliff Robertson because I don't know, he just seems like a really genuine kind of guy. Like he really cared for his nephew and his wife and all that. Like he just seems like a really nice and just you get what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, no, I understand. You think of him as an everyman. He's somebody that you can identify with. Like you could see him being your uncle, like that kind of idea.
Maybe not that
Um,
old, but yeah.
yeah, but you get my point. But
Yeah.
again, the only thing that I kind of had with it was like I feel like they gave him quirks as opposed to a character. And the thing, like, he always called Peter Parker Michelangelo and stuff in that,
I never
which I
got
don't know,
that, to be honest.
maybe that was a Ninja Turtles nod for all I know.
Hey, Michelangelo.
But or maybe that was a joke to go along with the fact he was going to have him paint at one point, and then he blew it off to go test out his
Oh,
spider powers. But that's the other thing that was really interesting about that movie that I like is Sam Raimi got to really experiment quite a bit with his old special effects background because of the scene where Peter Parker tests out his powers. And again, this is something that the Amazing Spider-Man completely fucked it up, and we didn't even really get to see it in the Tom Holland version, is the scenes where he's actually testing out his powers and he's swinging and jumping and crawling up walls and stuff. And for the most part, it was practical effects, except for the jumping scenes, which is obviously clunky looking CGI, and then some
he looks like fucking Woody.
cut in shots of Tobey Maguire like with a blue background and like a fan
I mean,
blowing up at him.
because because like the CGI shot of him like running looks like he runs like fucking Woody from Toy Story.
Oh yeah, no, exactly. He looks like Stretch Armstrong trying to run across rooftops. And like I said, that's the only thing that really hasn't aged very well with those films. But you know, they still they even still kept kind of the comedy elements too. Like when he's testing out the web for the first time and he's swinging with it, and then he realizes like, oh shit, I can't stop, and you see him actually hit the wall,
And it
and
zooms into his
you
fucking
kind
mouth.
of you lose the appreciation for it over the years because he actually that was a stunt man on a rope who actually hit a fucking wall as opposed to they just CGI'd something in and he hits the wall and falls down and then they cut to a shot of Tobey Maguire on the ground or something like that. Like that was an actual stunt man to hit a wall and then it cuts away.
Oh, really?
Well, yeah. Well, if
So
you
like,
look at I'm assuming it wasn't Tobey Maguire.
well, I mean, yeah, I wouldn't expect him to put Tobey Maguire there. But I mean, I didn't think he would actually hit the wall that hard, to be honest.
Well, it was probably like a fake wall, or there was some padding or something behind it, but it was definitely somebody actually hitting something, which again I appreciate a little bit more than some guy in a computer room just CGIing in the fake Tobey Maguire, and then he slams into the wall and falls down. It shows like there's a little bit more human effort put into it, and it was probably cheaper to be honest.
I mean, and I was gonna say it too about the organic web shooters. I personally did not mind them at all. But I mean, then again, this is like the movie that got me into Spider-Man and truly got me into Spider-Man in the first place. So of course it didn't bother me in the first place. But over time, it kind of it's a still kind of a bit jarring. Like when I get older, but at the same time, I don't mind it at all. I mean, then again,
I
it was
didn't
like
mind. Yeah.
it was originally like a thing that James Cameron originally brought up when he was writing his Spider-Man movie back in the
Right.
early '90s.
Right. Well, the thing with that though is that their idea is that they felt like if they introduced too much of like the technical side of Peter Parker, like the okay, he's a budding genius type of thing, then they would lose the audience because they wouldn't be invested in it as much because Peter Parker again is kind of supposed to be portrayed as the everyman. He's and I know I keep using that term, but he's supposed to be portrayed as the everyman. And he kind of Tobey Maguire did a very good job of that. But you remove him a little bit from that everyman status when you make him, the super genius, and he creates these web shooters, and it's so like science fictiony and stuff like that. Nowadays, you can think about, there's people in like machine shops that are making stuff like a Spider-Man web shooter. They just don't have the fluid, but they can make shit that can do that. So it's a bit more believable when you have a web shooter now as opposed to then because they thought it was going to be an audience separation a little bit. And again, they use the horror, not the horror, but the special effects and the comedy with that, with the scene when he's in the lunchroom. And he figures out that he can shoot the webbing out of his hand, and he does it by accident and accidentally hits Flash Thompson in the back with the lunch tray.
Yeah, but well, also funny thing too is that they were originally going to go with web shooters in this movie because There are promotional like trailers and with deleted scenes in them that actually show him working on web shooters. And then when you watch the movie, you could tell that the like when you look at the where the web starts from his wrist, it does look like it's kind of floating a little bit in the air. Like they
Yeah.
just kind of CGI removed the web shooters. I just thought that would be kind of interesting to know.
Yeah, no, that's definitely something I've never really noticed that watching the film. Now that I think about it, but I mean, there's some other stuff that's kind of funny too with the special effects. Which, again, I go back to the lunchroom scene. That's kind of funny where they show Peter Parker where it's when he knocks Mary Jane over and the lunch tray flies up into the air and he
He
grabs
doesn't
her and
knock
then
her
you see him
over.
catch or knocks her or something like that. He
Yeah, he
flips the
slips.
lunch tray up into
She slips
the
on
air and
apple juice.
right, there you go. And he grabs the lunch tray, and then all of the individual things in the lunch tray fall back down onto the lunch tray, and he catches it. That was apparently all done in one shot, and it was literally just a guy above the camera who was dropping that down. So that was good for Tobey Maguire. He managed to catch
Wow.
everything, which was pretty funny. But enough of the little nuances and stuff like that about that movie. Again, the other thing that I really love about this movie is that this it's so brutal at the end of that when you get to that final fight between Spider-Man and Green Goblin. That fight is brutal. Peter Parker gets the living shit beat out of him and he gets a
Yeah, it's nothing
goblin
you'll
bomb that
ever.
explodes in his face.
Yeah, it's nothing you'll ever see in fucking Tom Holland's movies. I can guarantee you that.
uh, the most recent one was not. I mean, he got messed up. He didn't get that as messed up as Tobey Maguire
You
did,
didn't get a
but
fucking pumpkin bomb to the face.
yeah, no, he got a pumpkin bomb to the face, like badly to the face. Like the fact that he still has skin on the right side of his face means that he's
I'm
lucky,
surprised he didn't even go
because literally
blind
all that
from
was
the.
between him and that was a piece of fabric.
Because I mean, I'm surprised he didn't
Oh,
get blinded from the explosion too.
yeah. Also, now that I think of, well, he did have visors and stuff on, even though one of them shattered. But now that we mentioned that too, what's with the like? Did he have like Wonder Woman gauntlets on underneath the spider suit? Because that scene where like they have the Green Goblin when they're in the house that's on fire and he throws the like blade pumpkin bomb things and Peter dodges them. Like he puts his wrists up and he blocks like two or three of them, and then the third one actually cuts him. Like what the hell's under his wrist that's blocking these things?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I'm thinking of like that they possibly. I don't know why. For some reason, I thought that he was just he dodged the first two, but and then
He
got hit
did.
actually hit the third one. But
What I remember from, well, I could be wrong again. I haven't seen the movie in a few years, but from what I remember of the scene, the first two go towards him, and he dodges. He dodges actually. There's four of them. He dodges all four of them. First, he jumps in between the two, and then he jumps up and jumps down between the other two. But then all of them come at him, and he puts his wrist up and blocks two of them, and then the third one slices his wrist open because that's when he goes back to his house for his apartment for Thanksgiving, and he bleeds on the floor, and he's hiding on the ceiling, and he's afraid Norman Osborn's going to find him.
yeah,
But I don't know. There's just some weird things with the spider suit every once in a while. But I keep going off on tangents. But that last battle again is just like, and then on top of that, they end it with the comic ending where the Goblin impales himself.
yeah. And they didn't have to, bring out some convoluted bullshit to bring him back for any sequels. Then
No,
again,
they
I
just
don't
had the
think they would have.
convoluted bullshit to give Harry Osborn motivation.
Yeah,
But
but
I think we've talked about that first movie a good amount.
but I
Let's
was
move
gonna
on
bring
to
up
the
too. I
objective
was
one.
gonna.
Yeah, go ahead.
I
Sorry.
was I was gonna talk about the scene where he's chasing after Uncle Ben's killer. Um,
Yep.
I think that's still really exhilarating and heart pumping scene because you know like I said, Uncle Ben was treated as such a careful and sweet kind of guy. But then, like when you see him, like dying in front of him, you kind of feel Peter Parker's pain. Like you want to see the killer get what he's got coming to him. But and like that whole scene of him chasing and like him nearly missing the bill, nearly getting hit hitting the building when he was
Yeah,
first.
at the beginning of it, when he first, that's when he first actually starts swinging, as opposed to before when he just does the one swing and hits the wall. That's when he actually starts using both of his webs on each hand and starts swinging through the streets. And eventually he comes down on him. And they actually have, I remember they have that great shot when they're in the warehouse and Peter Parker comes down on the, in that classic Spider-Man pose where he's
Yeah,
upside down and his legs are pressed together, and he comes down and then he just zips right back up.
yeah, and I just love the way how he just smashes the killer's face through the glass on the double doors.
Yep.
I I just love that part so much, even though they kind of
Like,
fucked that whole thing up in 3. But I still like to
yeah.
think that that he was actually the one that killed Uncle Ben, not
Well, yeah. Well,
Sandman.
again, that's Raimi's touch there again because of like Evil Dead and stuff like that. The brutality. I mean, that's kind of the thing that I think that they missed the mark on in the later films is Spider-Man. He does. He uses the web shooters. He uses the webs and stuff a bunch too. But like in just a plain old fist fight, he's like a fucking ninja. Like you shouldn't necessarily have the entire thing be him just webbing the guy up and then that's it.
No, because that would just be boring.
Exactly. Just like punch him, kick him, do something. Then at the end, after you've knocked him out or something, like hang him up by some webs or something like that. And again, you
Form a
don't
noose for
see
him.
those kind of like what happens with the Joker. I mean, what happens with Vulture in Homecoming? He just gets, he gets the he gets pulled down, the suit explodes, he lives, and then he gets arrested. Even in Far From Home, which by the way, spoilers. Even in Far From Home, at the end, Mysterio just gets shot. It's just he gets shot by an errant bullet. It's not anything that's amazingly climactic with him personally doing something, for the most part. And then he just sits there and dies. When you look at the Raimi version, it's like look at Doc Ock, look at Green Goblin, hell, even look at like Venom and Sandman and shit. They all had like really climactic endings.
Yeah.
Even though like Sandman doesn't die, but
No, he just turns into fucking sand in the wind.
like dust in the wind. Um, So as I said, I think we've talked about the first Spider-Man movie to death. Why don't we talk about number two now? Because number two is most people's favorites, and number two I think is a definite improvement over one, because the CGI has definitely not aged badly on that film. I think that they had perfected it to that point. I feel like it was really good. And the other thing is you brought back all the good performers from the previous movie, and you added in Doc Ock, who's probably Spider-Man's number two villain of all time. People could make the
You
case for
know
number one.
the the villain that Dan Slott kind of ruined and overplayed the shit out of in the comics.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dan
Which
Slott's kind of
again,
the reason
this
why
movie came out before that, so
I know, but nowadays, like, I kind of hate Doc Ock because of Dan Slott now.
yeah, I can see that. But I mean, that's the other thing is that I think that they didn't do very well in, or not to say that they didn't do very well, but Norman Osborn was not a sympathetic villain. He was just a
No,
scuzzball from point A to point B. Doc Ock in Spider-Man 2 is a sympathetic villain. His wife gets killed by accident the very first part of the movie. He has these tentacles that are fused to him, and the microchip or whatever that's supposed to keep the AI in check gets all fucked up. So now they're in his head. So he's just all kinds of messed up, and he's just trying to build this device to prove that it works. And it just he's just literally he was just in a shitty place at a shitty time.
yeah. I mean, like honestly, I do find him a little bit more sympathetic, like this version of Doc Ock, a little more sympathetic than the one in the comics. I mean, yeah, in the comics, like in Dan Slott goes into detail in Superior Spider-Man, like, oh, he was bullied when he was in high school, and whenever Spider-Man would taunt him during battle, he would get like extremely triggered and shit. It's like, yeah, but everybody's got bullied at some point in school. I mean, it's not like you know.
Yeah, Well, the other thing is you have a lot more of a sample size with Doc Ock in the comic books as opposed to just having him in a 2 hour film. You got to
Yeah.
you have to get the audience to kind of believe in him a little bit, and then it also sets up the ending too, where he winds up just pushing the invention into the New York harbor, so that way it doesn't blow up and kill everybody. Um, but I think that the more important thing with this film in general is the portray Peter Parker's progression forward, because now we've gone beyond the college years. He's in his early 20s. He's moved out at this point. He's in this shitty little apartment somewhere, and you
Pay
know
me rent.
exactly, yeah, exactly, pay me rent. And there's like he's literally in like the shittiest position possible and at this point in his life. Like even in the previous movie, like when he was in shit positions, he was still like, okay, I'm still kind of all right.
I'm still like I'm still living off of an AMA, so I'm still pretty good, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, okay, I'm still
But then
living out
again,
of like my old house in Queens.
I mean, AMA is like probably retired already by that time in that universe, so
He was
it probably
they
will.
were probably retired in the first movie when he was in high school.
Yeah, which
I mean, I'm
I'm
not.
sorry to go back to the first movie, but I just wanted to quickly, say that how much I loved, the wrestling scene with Randy Savage.
Oh yeah, Macho Man Randy Savage, and then Bruce Campbell's the announcer, which is great too. I love
Bonesaw
that
is ready.
scene. Bonesaw.
Three
That
minutes
was
of
the rest of his
game
name was
time.
Bonesaw. Oh god, it was so corny, but it worked. Um,
Yeah. Anyways, back to the second
yeah,
movie.
back to two. But the thing is like you kind of understand, like when he stops being Spider-Man, when he stops wanting to be Spider-Man, you kind of understand why, because you see how shitty his life is because he chooses to do this to himself. And it's all when you boil it down, it's all a personal choice. He chooses to be Spider-Man. It's not necessarily a need, at least not yet, until he actually gives up the mantle and then he realizes why he has to be Spider-Man.
Yeah.
The other thing about that movie is like I just like again, Kirsten Dunst as Mary Jane. I felt in the first movie she was written very plain, but I think that was on purpose because
Yeah,
I
I
think
mean,
the whole thing is to develop Peter Parker and develop Norman Osborn as opposed to developing some of the side characters. They saved
yeah,
that for
because
two.
I mean, she's tolerable in one. I mean, they do get the whole thing of her being the girl next door, having an abusive father, even though in the comics she was living with her aunt next door to Peter Parker. But it is what it is. But other than that, like, she was just really just meh. I mean, really, I feel like they should have just had Kirsten Dunst play Gwen Stacy. But and then funny, also funnily enough, I mean, Kirsten Dunst is actually a blonde in
Yep.
real life, and Bryce
The
Dallas
irony.
Howard's a redhead in real life.
Yeah, there is some irony there.
And then like,
But
I mean,
that's the thing in two though, is that her character, she actually acts like a person as opposed to acting like the two dimensional love interest in a superhero movie, which is kind of the cliche at the time.
yeah, I mean, in two she does kind of come off a little bitchy, but I'd say in three she
Oh
was
yeah,
probably a lot worse.
oh yeah, no. Three she comes off like a complete bitch, but in two, it's more like the idea of like, okay, I under like she's off kind of doing her thing, and I understand like because she has a whole plot line through the movie where you're like, okay, eventually they're going to kind of want they make it so that she starts off in one place, Peter starts off in one place, and then by the end they meet, and she realizes exactly, and then of course she finds out who he is and everything like that. What's up, Stallone fan?
Hey,
I'm
and
Rocky.
hey, Rocky Balboa. Hey,
Yeah,
Adrian.
that might be a
And
series for another day.
But
The
what I do hate is like, since this is, a big budget movie that made a shit ton of the box office, that it really tainted the image of Mary Jane Watson. And like, you had a lot of fucking normies that are like, oh, Mary Jane's such a bitch. Ugh, Gwen Stacy's so much better. That pissed me the fuck off so much. Like when you like, sorry to talk about Amazing Spider-Man, but when Amazing Spider-Man came out, everyone was like, "Oh yeah, Gwen Stacy's more interesting than Mary Jane Watson. She's such a better love interest." I mean, really, we're really in the comics. It's kind of the other way around. I mean, it's not that I hate Gwen in the comics. I do like Gwen. She's a sweetheart and all, but she's nowhere nearly as developed as Mary Jane in the comics. And
Yeah,
yeah,
I'll agree with you on that, and I think the reason why is because they had Emma Watson come in for Amazing Spider-Man. She had a pretty good movie career up until that point. I can't remember if she had been nominated or won an Oscar for The Help at that point. I know she was in Zombieland in '09, so she was a known face at the time. Kirsten Dunst was too, by the way, when she got the role in the first Spider-Man, maybe not as well known. But I think a lot of people really like Emma Watson, and I think that's why a lot of people really like that version of Gwen Stacy.
yeah.
And again, it's one of those things like when you see her in the first movie, everybody that knows the comic books is like, "All right, when the fuck are they going to kill her off?"
And because like I think that's like unavoidable. When you have Gwen Stacy in a Spider-Man movie, you're just gonna kind of think which movie she's gonna die. Like how many
You
movies
just look
how
at
many
your watch
movies is
like,
she
"All
gonna
right,
live?
when the hell is this going to happen? Come on." The
Yeah. I
but
mean, then again, I'd say Emma. Oh, sorry.
no, go ahead.
I'd say Emma Watson would be a better Mary Jane because I mean I don't know. Emma Watson
She's
seems
played a
I mean
redhead.
I mean yeah I mean Emma Stone, not Emma Watson. God damn it. Oh, fucking Harry Potter chick.
I've done it too. Don't worry about it.
Yeah,
I've done it too.
because Emma Stone, I think she seems more like a Mary Jane Watson in certain ways, if you know what I
Yeah,
mean.
I could see it. She's definitely she can play the snarky kind of smart ass. She can do the hot girl thing. Uh, yes, Stallone fan. We already corrected him. Um, uh,
I'm
so I
sorry,
mean,
okay.
there's Adrian. So there's so I think that was really the reason why a lot of people preferred Emma Watson when that movie, or a lot of people were coming out and saying that Emma Watson as Gwen Stacy is better than Mary Jane because of that, and because the Kirsten Dunst version was so off-putting in Spider-Man 3. Um,
Yeah,
but back to 2, uh, you know, there's a few little action scenes that are sprinkled throughout the film. You have the scene where uh, the you have the scene where he's climbing up the side of the building where he has Aunt May, Doc Ock, and that's actually a really good fight scene. I like that where Spider-Man uses the piece of the clock that falls down and launches it back at him and almost impales him with it.
yeah, and then I love that one scene where Aunt May like hits Doc Ock with
Oh yeah,
her
she hits him with the
umbrella.
umbrella when he's gonna stab him when he's gonna fly out of the window in the building
Shame
across
on
the way.
you.
That was pretty funny. I will give it that.
It looked like she was saying that to fucking Peter for a
Yep.
second.
the
Shame on you for
only
trying to save me.
Yep. The only thing I thought was kind of a little over the top for the film is his spider powers not working anymore because of psychological reasons.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
thought I thought that was a little much. Like, okay, his web shooters like give out mid flight, and then he just falls down and
like
hits
he's
the
got to
ground and shit.
wait till they recharge.
Yeah, it's like if he had web shooters, that might make sense. Like, oh shit, I I screwed up. I need more webs. But the way that they play it, and then the thing like, all right, I can't stick to walls, and then they have the whole scene later on before he actually gets his powers back, where he goes, "I'm back," and he flies through the air, and then he winds up, he hits all the
Oh my
clotheslines and stuff on
back!
the way down, and then he falls down. Oh my back, which might have actually been a reference to Tobey Maguire's horrible back injury that
Oh
almost knocked him out of
yeah,
that film.
I think they threw that in there because of his back injury.
Yeah, that might have been a joke on that, where Jake Gyllenhaal almost replaced him.
Thank God, no,
So
thank
Jake
God he
Gyllenhaal
didn't.
was Spider-Man.
Because
Yeah,
I'm
no,
honestly, Jake
again,
Gyllenhaal's a little too good looking to play Peter Parker, even at that time.
I believe him as Mysterio. I think he did a decent job at that. But the
Yeah,
so Spider-Man 2, I think we can both agree, objectively is probably the best Spider-Man film that we've had, at least live action anyway. Um, so let's move on to the train wreck that is Spider-Man 3. Uh, and I the there are so many problems with this fucking movie. So many goddamn problems.
yeah,
And
and I
most
and I
most of them do not have much to do with Tobey Maguire, aside from emo Peter Parker. Like, you didn't need to give him the emo haircut. Just make
no.
him pissed off.
I mean, even though I will admit, I do kind of get a laugh out of the dance scene where he's like trying to act like John Travolta.
Yeah,
Even though
that was just goofy as all hell. I'm like, what is going on here?
I
And
know
then at
people,
the end of it, he just like slaps Mary Jane in the face. It's like, eh.
I mean, to be fair, he was like caught in the moment. I mean, not that I'm trying to
Yeah, but
justify what he did. I'm just saying, like, sometimes shit like that happens during when you're in like in such an intense fight like that.
there there's a perfect scene from I don't know if you've seen How It Should Have Ended.
No, I mean, I don't think I've seen it.
So there's a YouTube channel. Go check it out. It's fun if anybody, whoever's listening. Um, and the basically there's a skit where it's Superman and Batman are in a cafe, and Peter Parker doing the strut is going down the street when they have, and ironically they even have, I think they have Saturday Night Fever music playing when he's going down the street,
No, it's James
because
Brown
they
that
have
they have
they have the
playing.
funk. What is it?
No, it's James Brown. I don't think. I mean, I don't think that the Saturday Night Fever soundtrack had that James Brown song that they played during that. That
Maybe, but
yeah.
it felt like it. It felt like something out of the '70s, which was really weird to me in a film that was coming out in 2007. And the only thing was is that so he walks by the window with two of them, and then Superman just goes, "What the hell was that?" And they said, I think Peter Parker just did a Saturday Night Fever strut past our window." And it's like, that's what you feel like as an audience member watching that scene. It's like, when did this become like a corny '70s movie all of a sudden? What the fuck?
Yeah, and should we talk about Twink and Eddie Brock or Twink Venom? And
Oh God! I mean, we're gonna have to at some point, but like, the thing with Venom in that movie is when when Peter's in the black spider suit, it works. It's not terrible. It works. Like, it's believable that I feel like he wants to murder people when he's in that thing, because you can't see his face. You can't see his hair. You just see him beating the ever living shit out of everything that moves. So I don't have a problem with Peter Parker in the Venom suit. I think that they actually did a decent job with that. What I have a problem with is when Topher Grace is in the Venom suit, because you shouldn't see his fucking face. Because every
no,
time he pulls that thing back and you see his face, there's no tension anymore. It's like, it's Topher Grace in a Halloween costume.
never wound what you can't kill. God,
Oh dear. Who made that casting choice?
I
I would
don't
love
know.
to know. I don't think it was Raimi. I really don't think it was
I mean,
Raimi. I
Topher
think
Grace would
that
be
was
more.
somebody at Universal who wanted
I'm,
him in there, because I think that was actually, or not Universal. Somebody at Sony wanted him in there. I'm guessing, because I don't see Sam Raimi making that choice.
no, I don't see that either. I mean, Topher Grace seems more fitting for like to play Peter Parker, but no, not not muscle bound Eddie Brock. No,
Yeah. No, no, they could have gone with so much. You know who would have probably been a decent Venom is Thomas Hayden Church instead of Sandman, because he got jacked for that movie.
I mean, but then again, I do think that Thomas Hayden Church was like like probably a perfect casting choice for Sandman because he does look like he's lifted from the comic page
Yeah, no. They make him look exactly like he did from the comic books with the striped shirt and everything, the haircut. It looks identical to how he's supposed to look in the comic books. Um, but the whole thing with uh, the and again, this was we all know that at this point that it was studio meddling that forced
yeah,
all of
because
these characters in. The studio said you have to have Venom in the movie no matter what,
yeah,
and
because in
Raimi
the
wanted to do Sandman, and then
originally he wanted to do Sandman and Vulture actually, because they were going to get Ben Kingsley
yeah,
on board to play Vulture, but then
that would have
then
actually
Avi,
been interesting.
yeah, I think they would be a pretty good Vulture, like a pretty interesting choice for a Vulture. But then Avi
Yeah.
Arad and Sony, Avi Arad was like, "Oh no, but we need to have the Venom in this movie." I'm like, "What? However the fuck he sounds like, because he's a really popular character." God, I can't
Like
stand that fucker.
here's what you should have done. Here's exactly what you should have done. You should have had, if you're gonna do it, they should have had him have the Venom suit at the beginning, and then at the end of the movie, after everything's all said and done, then he gets the Venom suit removed, and then you tease Venom for number 4. That's what they should
Yeah,
have done. They
I
shouldn't
was
have
gonna
tried to
say
shoehorn him into the end of the movie.
I was gonna say they should have just like split this movie into two parts. Like they should have had like that
Yeah,
one scene where where the camera like zooms into Eddie Brock's mouth or Venom's mouth. It should have just cut to the credits, right there.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, you're 100% right in the scene in the church there. Which, by the way, that is another really good scene when he goes up in the church bell tower and rips the Venom suit off.
Yeah, I just want to know how the hell he got back without being seen naked.
Yeah, that's a very good question. I don't know, maybe there was just like a tarp blowing in the wind up there. Like, I mean, at least in the comic books, they explain that he put on a Fantastic Four costume in a bag.
Well, then again, I mean, he in the comics when he actually finally got rid of the suit, he still had his boxers on, like like somehow.
Because the Venom symbiote apparently wanted to leave him with some dignity. Um,
Yeah, apparently.
but again, here's the thing that I think is the main reason why Spider-Man 3 doesn't work is because it's the breakdown of the supporting cast. Because the supporting cast had always been good in those first two films. They were really good in the second film. They were solid in the first film. The third film, it all falls apart. We already talked about Mary Jane, but also James Franco as Harry Osborn because they set
Oh yeah,
that
we
stuff
haven't
up
touched
at the end
upon
of the
him
second film.
at all, really.
No, yeah, we really haven't touched upon him all that much, but in terms of his involvement, um, where he is, where he goes, and all the stuff like he hates Spider-Man because he thinks Spider-Man killed his father and all that stuff, and they set up the new that he's going to be the new Green Goblin at the end of 2, which okay, that's good, but then in 3 they have this whole like subplot in the middle of the movie about the amnesia plot line. You're like, what the fuck is this? Why are you giving him amnesia for like 20 minutes in the middle of the movie
And
unless you literally couldn't find anything else for his character to do for those 20 minutes?
I don't I understand that they didn't want him to like wear the exact same costume like as Norman wore in the first movie, but they could have gone something better within the fucking paintball snowboarder costume they
Yeah,
went
no,
with.
you're right. He looks like something like right out of like an X Games thing.
Yeah.
Like I could see him jumping snowmobiles in that costume. Like I get the idea. Like maybe you don't want him to be the exact same, but at least make him look intimidating. He doesn't even look intimidating,
I
and then
mean
he
if
goes
they
out like a
really
bitch.
yeah. Just gets hit with like it's like
I'm here to
uh,
help, Peter. Oh God, I got impaled on my glider.
he's trying to kill me. He's killed himself. Shut up.
the but yeah, I think that again they kind of messed up on that where they didn't write Harry Osborn very good in the third one at all. Again, and I think that's where the main part of the movie fails, that supporting cast. Then you add in Gwen Stacy, who didn't need to be there. There was
He's
no
just there
point
for
for her
fan
being there.
service.
Yeah, exactly. She's literally just there. Her and Captain Stacy are just there for fan
I
service.
forgot
There's no
Captain
reason for them
Stacy
to
was in
be
the
there.
fucking movie.
Yeah, he's played by shit, I can't remember the guy's name.
Zephyrin Cochrane or whatever the fuck his name was.
Yeah, I think he was on Game of Thrones. I can't remember.
Some
Um,
crusty old dude.
why? Yeah, why am I forgetting? He's been in like a million things, but I can't remember anything he's been in for some reason. But yeah, but for some reason they just throw them in and nothing happens. You know, they even have the scene where he saves Gwen, Spider-Man saves Gwen Stacy, and they have the debris falling down.
Oh
I don't
yeah.
think he died.
No, and
He
like I was
doesn't
gonna
die
say,
if I remember correctly.
no, and I was gonna say too, like when Eddie Brock shows up, he's like, "Oh my god, that's Gwen." He's like, "What?" And then he just fucking grabs the camera. He's like, "What's she doing up there?" I don't know. She's just fucking hanging around. Like, why are you not concerned that your own daughter's gonna fucking die? Like, oh
Yeah,
my
here's an
god, what's
idea.
she?
Why aren't you concerned that there's going to be a building collapse because a crane just took out 2/3 of a floor?
Okay, go ahead. I got a secret. It's my copia. And I was gonna bring this
the
up too earlier, like how they just blatantly switched the personalities of Mary Jane and Gwen Stacy, because Gwen Stacy now is like this wannabe model when it
Yeah, I was
really,
going to say she works for a fashion agency, doesn't she?
yeah.
In the movie. Oh, for fuck's sake. The and then all you did like it's blatant like Spider-Man 3 has so many characters that are just shoehorned into it for no reason. And it doesn't make that much sense.
No.
The but I mean, I guess that if you're gonna kill a series, I guess you kill it with Spider-Man 3, despite the fact the movie made over $700 million. But
I mean,
um,
I mean, it still, really disappoints me because because they really could have, easily redeemed themselves with the Spider-Man 4, but then, with the writers and shit, like how a lot of the, a lot of the scripts they were going with didn't satisfy Raimi at all. And, they were pushing for a
yeah,
2011 release. Like, you just kind of
yeah.
gave up, like, understandably so.
Well, I get the same thing kind of happened with the whole Hellboy 3, where they went with a reboot instead, and we obviously know how that turned out. But the
Ugh.
I think Wep is still scarred. But the thing with that whole original trilogy is that again, yeah, the third one kind of ruins a lot of it. But as long as you take those first two films were essentially the highest point of like Spider-Man films that we got, basically.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe in the future we'll get some good gems, but
And I
the
don't think we have to touch upon how good J.K. Simmons was in those movies. I mean, I think
oh yeah, no,
everybody,
he was he was like you ripped him out of the comic books, and
yeah,
again,
because
that's why they brought him back.
I mean, we, I can't, like, I know we should have just brought him up earlier, but I mean, then again, what else is there to be said about his performance that hasn't been said already?
Hmm. Exactly. The so I guess that covers the main one. So I guess now we move into the Amazing Spider-Man films, which the first Amazing Spider-Man I don't hate, but I feel like when you watch that movie, they're giving it the Dark Knight treatment, and by that I mean
Yeah.
they're making it dark and gritty. Everything there's nothing in hard lighting really for the majority of that film. A majority of like the action scenes happen at night.
I mean, that movie is just painfully average, if you ask me. Because at the time, I
Yeah,
fucking
yeah.
hated it because at the time it seemed like a giant smokescreen just to shit on the Raimi movies for no reason because everybody was like suddenly turning against them, like, oh, they suck. They're like, they're too campy and shit. And Tobey Maguire
It's because
cried too
well,
much.
I think you had a lot of people that were coming out because of 3 because a lot of people hated 3.
I mean,
And
Toby,
I think that new one because it was a counterintuitive because everybody knew that they were making that first Amazing Spider-Man just to keep the rights.
yeah, because and then like I was gonna bring up like how they mentioned that Tobey Maguire cries too much in the original trilogy. Really, like he cries when it's needed. Like he cries when Uncle Ben dies. He cries after his graduation when he's thinking about Uncle Ben. Because I mean, Uncle Ben was like probably like a month dead by that point. And then in two, fuck, what was he crying about in two? I can't remember. But I
He
know in
cries. I'm trying to remember. He
oh
cries
yeah,
in 2 over a
and
couple of things.
over like Uncle Ben in that dream sequence.
Yeah.
I mean,
So
God forbid you can't cry about your, your dead loved one every now and then.
I
And
know.
then in the movie, he
But see,
breaks up with Mary Jane, and
yeah,
then Harry dies. Like, oh yeah, he cries too much. Then why aren't you complaining about how Tom Holland cries like a bitch when the suit is taken from him by Tony Stark?
yeah. I mean, again, it's one of those things. Like, I feel like I'm not sure if it's coming from the same crowd of people, but yeah, I mean, it's hypocritical if it is. But the thing with the Amazing Spider-Man films, especially the first one, is the whole point of that movie. I feel like was to not be like Raimi. That was the entire point of that movie. Almost was we
Even though they
know we're
steal
going to give
some,
you a
even though they steal some, key notes from the Raimi movie, the first Raimi movie.
they they do, but the whole well, I mean, you kind of have to because if you're using the comic as a base, but if you watch that movie, like the way that they go about it, like they never say the famous line, they never say "with great power comes great responsibility" out loud. They allude to it, they never say it. Um, they stay away from the whole wrestling background. It's like, no, he's a vigilante out on the streets in like a hoodie and stuff, and he's beating
Like his
people up.
motivation for
Um,
becoming Spider-Man was revenge, not like because well, great power comes with great responsibility. No, he'd like
yeah,
become
exactly.
Spider-Man because of like he wants blood, basically.
He wants to beat the shit. He wants to kill that guy. Like that's the whole point. Is he wants to kill the guy that killed Uncle Ben, and he never
It,
finds him.
yeah, and it never
Uh,
goes anywhere. Like, what's the fucking point of that?
yeah,
I mean,
I I understand what the point of it is. I don't agree with it, but I understand it. The whole point is that crime is faceless. I think in a way, and again, I'm grasping at straws here because I think that the motivation kind of sucks. But from what I gathered from it, the idea was is that you can't change what happened by going after one guy, but if you try to help everybody, you might be able to change something or something like that. It's like you can't change what happened here, but you might be able to stop it in the future. So stop chasing the past. I think that's kind of the idea they try to get across with that, but I'm not 100% sure. That's just me just completely throwing it out into the wind. But
I mean,
the
hell, in that shitty Amazing Spider-Man 2 video game, they somehow managed to resolve that in like even like a really stupid way by having Cletus Cassidy become a fucking vigilante. But whatever.
yeah,
Anyways,
okay, that's just weird. The but again, I feel like that the first Amazing Spider-Man film was the movie that the whole point is we don't want to be like Raimi because you see the same thing with you see the same thing with the testing out the power scene. Like the testing out his power scene is so anticlimactic. It is so baseless. It's literally just like a 2-minute montage of him like flying around on a skateboard. It's like okay, and
then
then
swinging
after
on a
that, then he
chain.
just starts fucking with people. Like the whole scene with Flash, which I will admit is funny. The whole scene he has with Flash Thompson, where he's playing
Yeah,
basketball and he dunks on him, and breaks the thing. Like that's kind of funny. I get that. And the scene where he's in the where he first is kind of like freaking out, like that's one of the scenes that I actually thought was good when he first figures out like there's something wrong with me, where he rips the towel rack off the wall by accident. And he doesn't realize like how strong he is, and he's just kind of sitting in his bed. He doesn't want to touch anything because he's afraid he's going to break
yeah,
something.
because I do like how he accidentally, breaks his alarm clock and he squeezes a shit ton of like almost like his toothpaste bottle like nearly
Yep.
empty.
Yep. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. The same thing. And then he's just like sitting in the bed. He doesn't want to touch anything because he's afraid he's going to like break more shit. Like that actually felt like okay, this feels kind of like real. I get that. But then it loses steam once you see the spider suit, because the spider suit in that movie looks god fucking awful.
I mean,
I mean,
people like try to say like that. Oh,
I
it's more
understand
real.
it's supposed to be a wetsuit. I get it. I get it's supposed to be a wetsuit he ordered offline, but you don't make it look like a wetsuit he ordered offline.
But I mean, people were like, "Oh, well, it's more realistic that how he looks like that instead of having the suit that he had in in the beginning of the first movie, but like the first Rain movie." But the thing is, it still looks like a movie quality suit, and not only that, like he's supposed to be like a poor kid from Forest Hills, and how the hell is he supposed to afford something like that? I mean, in the comics, he just
Yeah.
he kind of sewn his and knitted his costume together.
Yeah, and to be fair, even in the Raimi films, they never show how he actually gets the costume. They just show him drawing the suit, and then he's just in it. They just jump cut. They don't show how he actually gets the suit.
Yeah,
I know I think in the comics he makes it, but
yeah, he does.
the
That's what I just got done
yeah,
saying
but
not too long ago.
yeah, exactly. And but like the thing that I have with it is like it just what here's another thing I'm actually curious about. What the hell is the mask made of? Because he's wearing a wetsuit. You're not going to put a rubber mask on over your face when you're wearing a wetsuit because you can't breathe.
I don't know. He probably just pokes little tiny holes in the front of the mask.
Maybe, but he's got to be hyperventilating in that thing. Like, but again, and then you move into
And
the
he's got
villain
the
of that
cod
story, which is
piece on that.
Rice Ilfons.
He's
Oh
got the
God,
cod
which
piece
is
on the
Rice
cod.
Ilfons as Kirk Connors slash the Lizard, and
They cut.
I didn't really like him in that movie at
I
all.
didn't
He
give a
didn't
shit
really come
about it.
off. Yeah, he didn't really come off very well to me. It's like, okay, like I get it. The whole thing is like they got the motivation right. At least like, okay, yeah, I'm trying to regrow my arm and stuff like that because I lost it. Like, all right, we get the idea. But
And the
like
fact
then
that
it
sorry,
doesn't go any deeper.
yeah, because you do know, like, you remember how, like, they cut so much shit out of this movie. It's like, it's not to the point where it's not even fucking funny. Like, there are, like, scenes that are, that explain certain shit that are just cut completely out. That Indian guy
Yeah,
that
and
Kirk
again,
Connors was
I
going
blame Tony
after?
for that.
He was like, after that bridge scene, he was like complete. He just like vanished completely. But then in the
Yep.
deleted scene, like when Peter Parker's exploring his underground lab, the Indian guy is like there, and then when and then he gets his fucking head bitten off by Lizard.
Yeah, it's just like and the other thing is like I don't really care much for the design of Lizard. I think
I'm,
it looks kind of goofy.
I mean, it looks retarded. I mean, I dig the Todd McFarlane, look to the Lizard a lot more with the snout rather than
Yeah, like it makes him look a bit more like almost like a crocodile, I guess.
a little more lizard-like. At least it looks more like a
Yeah,
reptile than a shitty, face scan that looks like Andy Circus
yeah.
would
He,
fucking.
he looks like a ripoff from like the lizards from V. Like
Yeah.
that's what he looks like. But I mean, I think he was a weak villain for that movie, and I think that ultimately hurt a lot of stuff involving that film because I get the idea that you want to develop Peter Parker first and foremost, and we've already gone into Emma Stone as Gwen Stacy, but the one thing that I thought was very strange about that movie was Dennis Leary playing Captain Stacy, um, and the way that he dies is like, hang on a second. So you're telling me that you're standing over for whatever reason there's a giant pit that's filled with canisters of liquid nitrogen, um, and you're just blasting the lizard's hands and feet and everything off, and then after that, while Spider-Man is like trying to like save everybody from becoming like lizard monsters or whatever, and the then the lizard just like one shots him and he's dead. It's like, dude, you could have just ran. Like he was up there already. Like you would have been fine.
I
Like
mean,
if
how did
he's
he
more
get
than
up
halfway
to?
there, you're probably good.
I mean, how the hell did he get up on top of Oscorp that fast? That's what I want to know. Like, it would at least like
Yeah,
take him
actually,
an
that's
hour.
another really good question. That's another really good question because he was street level. Because it took Spider Man the effort of every crane operator in New York City to get up to that fucking thing as fast as he did.
Yeah, and like I was
And
gonna bring up
that is a
too,
horrible scene too.
but I will admit I do like that one scene where he gives that kid his mask over in that bridge scene. Even though I think the kid's acting is kind
Yeah,
of shit, where or Peter
yeah.
Parker's like, "Hey, come on, you can climb up, you can do it." He's like, and then the kid's like, "I can't." It looks like he's fucking smiling.
God damn it.
It looks like he was
The
smiling. I'm like, what the fuck are you smiling about?
Yeah,
You're gonna burn.
that's just bad child acting. That was probably like the director's nephew. Um, the yeah, I mean the thing with that is I know what they were trying to do. They were trying to make you think about like the subway scene, not the subway, the train scene from Spider-Man 2,
Yeah.
where they all step in front of Doc Ock. It's like you mess with him, or the bridge scene from one, where like you mess with one of us, you mess with all of it, like throwing stuff
The
at
hokey
Green
post
Goblin.
9/11 kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. I don't necessarily know if it's hokey, but the whole idea, because the scene was filmed before 9/11, but the uh, the thing is, like, I understand you're trying to get us back to that scene or get us back to that feeling, but it doesn't come off that way. It comes off incredibly dumb because now you have this other situation now where you have apparently an entire group of crane operators that were able to coordinate with each other long enough to get to separate construction sites all the way down the road to Oscorp Tower and turn every crane so that Spider-Man could swing off of them. That's even more impressive than Dennis Leary sprinting up flights of stairs to get to the top of Oscorp. Because like that's the problem, is like the whole climax of that movie is like it's a domino effect, but it's a domino effect that doesn't work because you don't understand where it started.
Yeah.
And then for whatever reason, Lizard just lets Gwen Stacy live for some reason at one point when she's like hiding in there and she's spraying him with like the aerosol can with the fire and stuff like that when she's in the little that little like crawl space or whatever it is inside the building when she's hitting them with the fireball. It's like, what the like why didn't you just fucking brutally murder her? Like, to be honest, you didn't even really, if you're going by those odds, you really didn't even need to murder Dennis Leary. You could have just gone right for Spider-Man because apparently shotgun blast.
Then again, at least she wasn't like the typical damsel in distress that fucking Kirsten Dunst's Mary Jane was.
Yeah, I mean that again, that's something that I think a lot of people pointed out with that movie. But again, I feel like they're trying to do the opposite of what it's the same idea with the film. Don't do what Raimi did.
No.
And then as soon as you get to part 2, it's like, oh, let's do what Raimi did.
Yeah. Like, oops. Fucking calendar fell. Holy shit. Yeah, I was trying to flip my calendar, and all of a sudden, the fucking tack like slipped off.
Yeah.
Anyways,
moving into the second movie, like here's the other thing that kind of this is going into the second film, end of the first film. So Dennis Leary dies, and then Spider-Man just ghosts Gwen Stacy, and she's like, "My dad died. Where were you?" It's like, you couldn't even go to the funeral with your girlfriend and then break up with her. It's like,
and you just
it's
break
just kind
up
of
with
a
her.
common sense thing.
Break up with her on her dad's funeral. Like, what kind of piece of shit are you to do that? Like, you couldn't.
He didn't even break up with her. He just like ghosted her after the whole Oscorp thing, because Dennis Leary said, "Stay the fuck away from my daughter."
I mean, because like, you could have just at least like waited like like a month or two after.
Yeah, well, that's what a smart person does. Is you wait like a month, and then you break up with her after that and say, "Look, it's just not working. You need to be by yourself." You come up with a fucking excuse, and then they just do like the whole thing where like then he just sits down in class. It's like, you're supposed to do some things that maybe you're not supposed to do. It's like, okay, now you just erased like that little like 10-minute stretch, and that speech by Dennis Leary means nothing. You should have saved that. You should have cut that. You should have said, okay, he goes, sir. You have that scene where she goes to his house. They have the argument. They leave, and then you end the movie where they're separated. And then when you go to Amazing Spider-Man 2, then you have the scene where they start getting back together. That's what you do if you're a smart filmmaker. You don't just do a fucking cyclical plot line for 10 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, like, what was that? Like, what was the fucking teacher that I was talking about? Then Andrew Garfield was like, "Oh yeah, but those are the best kind." And then that's
yeah. I forget exactly what the line is. Again, most of that movie is forgettable, except for the Stan Lee cameo. The Stan Lee cameo is fucking hilarious. But
it's one of the best Stan Lee cameos in any Marvel movie.
It is. That's probably the only thing they got right in that movie. But then you move on to 2, and 2 improves on a lot of things from Amazing
I don't
Spider-Man
know.
1. It improves on things aesthetically, at least. The suit is better.
I mean, yeah,
The
the
suit
colors
he
are.
actually looks like Spider-Man.
I mean, the color of the movie is a lot better.
Yeah, definitely. They did not improve on the villains at all.
No. It's my birthday.
For that movie, the advertising for that movie was fucking abysmal.
Yeah, fucking. Oh, Jesus Christ! That I hate this movie so much, but it's so fucking hilarious just to joke about it. You're a fraud, Spider-Man. Oh!
Yeah, exactly. But it's like Paul Giamatti as the Rhino. Who thought that was a good decision?
That was like one of the more cringiest moments in that fucking movie. I say hello to the X-57.
I know. I'm not afraid of a dwarf in a mech suit.
He looks like he had to take a constipated shit anytime, like every scene that he was in.
Yeah,
basically.
he was doing a lot of face acting there, not the good kind. The other thing that I thought was kind of weird is like they start off that movie where they do the chase scene where he's in the van, he's driving the vials of crap somewhere, and Spider-Man's like in the back, he's talking to Gwen at the same time that he's trying to like catch all these little vials, and it's like the slapstick comedy was like, I feel like Sam Raimi ghost directed that scene. This feels like a Three Stooges sketch.
But at the same time, like he was just doing so much dicking around that like pretty much almost like a shit ton of people got either injured or just fucking killed.
I will say this about Andrew Garfield as his portrayal of Spider-Man, because we've mostly been talking about the films as opposed to him as an actor playing the part. He's a terrible Peter Parker. He's a horrible Peter Parker. He's probably the worst Peter Parker we've had on screen out of the three major ones.
Probably like for
but
generations
I like
to
Spider-Man.
come.
But I like him as Spider-Man in terms of his demeanor, because he is probably the funniest Spider-Man.
I mean, I wasn't really laughing at the jokes he was saying, but I did appreciate that, he did kind of capture, the essence as Spider-Man. Like, keep in mind, as Spider-Man, not Peter Parker.
Right. As Peter Parker, I think he's horrible. I don't think he's a good Peter Parker at all. He is not believable. He's an Abercrombie and Fitch model in high school. Okay,
that's not what Peter Parker is like. Like, anytime I see him, like, other than the whole, oh, he looks like a vampire for Twilight. But then other than that, like, I don't know why. Every time I see him, I imagine. Yeah. I mean, I just imagine, like, keep thinking of, like, that one song by Avril Lavigne called Skater Boy.
Oh, dear God. You're not wrong. You're not wrong. He has that, like, angsty early 2000s type of, like, hero thing going on, which is not like, good in mid to late 2014.
Like, grungy, like, mid to late 2000s, like, post-grunge bullshit.
The other thing that I had with that movie, and again, this is kind of the idea of, like, oh, we're not going to do what Raimi did, is they skip over Norman Osborn. Norman Osborn's like this sickly old guy in a bed with like green skin and long fingernails. I feel like I'm walking into Howard Hughes' bedroom when they do that scene where Dane DeHaan goes in and talks to him. It's like, what's going on here? He's supposed to be the Green Goblin. He's not supposed to be a sickly old weirdo in a bed who has like a green skin disease.
Yeah, and I was gonna bring up too, like, one of the things they were planning for an Amazing Spider-Man 3 was having Norman Osborn's, like, having bring Norman Osborn back, but have like his head, like have like a talking head or some shit like that. Like, I'm not even joking. That was one of the ideas of Amazing Spider-Man 3. But
I mean, I could see it being at least amusing, maybe not good, but at least funny. I mean, but let's talk about Jamie Foxx's Electro, because that's a train wreck. That's an ever-living fucking train wreck.
That pissed me off how
I don't know who did the character designs for this movie. I don't know who thought it was a good idea to make him the way that he was, but whoever did that probably did not work on any more movies for Sony.
He's basically just Jim Carrey's Riddler from Batman Forever.
Yeah, kinda, a little bit, yeah, especially before he becomes Electro, and then he becomes Electro. I don't mind the Electro look that they give him because I know they're trying to go off the ultimate version of the character.
Yeah,
I
but
understand that.
but the way the fucking gap in his teeth just like fuses together.
Yeah, yeah, that's like okay. Yeah, apparently, becoming a supervillain fixes all your dental problems.
Yeah, and
Um,
he's healing his scars.
yeah. And the other thing that I thought was kind of interesting is the fight scenes between Spider-Man and Electro were not terrible. The scenes in Times Square, I didn't mind that much. The scenes like where he catches the car or where he the web shooters explode and stuff like that because Electro like short circuits his web shooters and stuff. Those aren't bad scenes. I like those. I think they did a good job on those. The CGI is good. And then also the end fight scene where he fights him at the power plant is also a good one, and it also has probably the funniest joke in the movie where they're playing Itsy Bitsy Spider on the Transformers.
Eh. But the soundtrack is fucking terrible. You know that song that
Oh
they're
yeah,
playing in the
no, no,
Times Square scene that he lied to me, he hates me, virginity,
no.
electricity.
Oh dear God. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
it's not
Pharrell.
it's not pretty.
Yeah, you can thank Pharrell Williams, that fucking dipshit, for this awful soundtrack.
That's the other thing is like, look, like I will say this: I like the Raimi soundtrack. I don't even remember the Amazing Spider-Man soundtrack at all. It was that forgettable. You're gonna get pissed at me for this. I love the new Spider-Man soundtrack that they have for those newer films.
Fuck.
I like it better.
What?
I like the soundtrack better. I
I'm
like the
just.
soundtrack better. Not necessarily the film, but I like the soundtrack better because they took that old Spider-Man tune from the 60s, the original cartoon tune, and they turned it into something that actually sounds awesome. And I'm like, I don't know who the fuck did that. I don't know who the sound
Oh,
mixer
Hans
or
Zimmer.
the score. Who is it?
Yeah, Hans Zimmer.
It's Hans Zimmer. He did an amazing job with that. I love the score for those
Yeah,
new
'cause at
films because
least.
like I don't for whatever reason I love that tune that they did the old Spider-Man tune.
I
Maybe
mean,
it's because I'm secretly a boomer.
at least it's more memorable than like half of like, well, most of the MCU's soundtracks and themes. At
Yeah,
least.
a lot of it is very generic. But like the Amazing Spider-Man soundtrack, I can't even remember what it sounds like.
I don't even know.
Like it's that forgettable that you can't even remember it. And you know that's one of the call signs of like a good movie is like you remember the music from the film, you remember the soundtrack. I still remember the soundtrack from the Raimi films. I can't hum it for the life of me, but I can hear it in my head. Again, I think that they did a really good job on that. I think they did a really good job on the newer ones for the soundtrack for those films. But the Amazing Spider ones, the music is just abysmal.
Yeah. Okay, we
Then
also
then
talk.
like the Gwen Stacy. Let's talk about the Gwen Stacy death scene in Amazing Spider-Man 2 because that's like wow, like you had to have the world's biggest shoehorn for this fucking thing.
I mean, you like, why did you do this like 2 movies in? You should at least like saved it for the third movie.
I don't see. Here's the thing. I don't mind the fact that they did it at the end of the second movie. What I have a problem with is that they don't they don't like set it up. They don't like set up like they don't set it up properly. Like they want it to happen like the comic books where the Green Goblin drops her and Spider-Man grabs her with the web and she cracks her neck and dies. Except I think in this one she like smashes her head or something like
Yeah,
that and
she
dies.
smacks her
Um,
like head against the concrete.
yeah, yeah. So uh, the but for whatever reason they wanted it to happen that way. And again, even though Raimi basically did the same thing with the original Spider-Man film, except they altered it so that the girl didn't die. But the the whole problem with it is like you shouldn't have even had the Green Goblin in that movie. Like if you're gonna set it up for the next film.
I mean, at
Like
least
that's
have
the thing is
Norman
like I
Osborn
feel
be
like
the.
good.
At least have Norman Osborn be the Green Goblin first, then save
Yeah.
Dane DeHaan as Green Goblin like for later movies. Don't blow your load
Yeah,
so early.
it's not even blowing your load at that point. It's like just like you just threw shit at the screen and hope something stuck. Like, because I know the whole there was a big push in Amazing Spider-Man 2, and you can see it in some of the background stuff too, where they were pushing for a Sinister Six movie. Everybody knew
Oh yeah,
that they were pushing for that Sinister Six movie because you have like there's a scene where the one of the guys that works for Osborn is like walking through the lab and he has
Alistair Smythe
the
in
Doc
the
Ock
movie.
claws and the Vulture suit.
Yeah, where Gustav Fears. I mean, yeah, his name is Gustav Fears. Is anybody who's read a
Yeah,
comic book knows who he is. But like yeah, you walk past the vulture wings, the Doc Ock tentacles. Yeah, it's blatantly setting it up for Sinister Six.
yeah. And
'Cause
then that's why they have the three villains. That's why they have Rhino in there. That's why they got the new Green Goblin. That's why they got Electro. That's why they have Lizard from the previous movie. It's like, okay, now we've teased these other two guys. We can introduce them in a Sinister Six movie and we'll be good. No,
yeah,
because
and you
again,
forget,
this is something that Sony likes to do. Is they like to throw a bunch of shit. If they have one successful movie, then they like to throw a bunch of shit at the wall and say like, oh, we're gonna do this, this, and this, and then most of the time it all fails because
yeah,
they
and
don't set
then
it up properly.
and then you'll forget that Alistair Smythe was in this movie, and then Dr. Ashley
Yeah, I did.
Kafka was
Alicia
in this
Hardy's
movie.
in this too.
Yeah, yeah, and
She's played by the chick from Rogue One.
yeah, what was it? Oh yeah, Felicity Jones, I think it was.
Yes, I believe that is the actress's name.
Yeah,
But
Felicity Jones.
Alicia Hardy's in this movie is like Norman Osborn's secretary. It's like, okay.
I mean, Felicity Jones is a decent actress, but I don't really see her as being, Black Cat. If I were being honest with you.
Oh, you should look up some pictures online. I could definitely see that, given some photos I've seen. But not safe for work, by the way. So
Oh.
the the other thing is that this movie, they just tried to cram too much into this movie to set up all these spin-off things. Because the other thing they were planning on doing is bringing Emma Stone back for a Spider-Gwen
Oh
movie,
yeah,
which they didn't wind up doing, and a few other things. Like this is just Amazing Spider-Man 2 was a glorious train wreck of crap.
Yeah. What I was gonna say too is that Ashley Kafka was like gender switched to a man in this movie for some stupid fucking reason.
Yep, I guess they only had that one extra on set that day. So that pretty much covers the middle child of the Spider-Man franchise that we all like to forget about. And so now let's just go into the modern one. Let's go into Tom Holland, and I think we'll just cover the solo films with this. I don't think we need to go into any of the Avengers movies or any of that bullshit. So Homecoming. So obviously they give you a little bit of the backstory in Civil War, but Homecoming is where we actually get to see Peter Parker in this universe for the first time. And I didn't mind Homecoming knowing what was coming next. And this is the way I choose to view Tom Holland as Spider-Man is because he is in an expanded universe and he's in a bunch of these other movies and stuff like that. I view him as a long form Spider-Man. So I'm not that first movie. I was expecting like, okay, we'll see some stuff and everything like that. But as far as his progression is slower because he's in so many movies, and I understand that. Where the point at the end of Far From Home, where he actually starts to resemble the Spider-Man that we know.
Yeah,
even though it took 5 years.
Because at least since Sony and Marvel finally kissed and made up again, hopefully we'll see this Peter Parker eventually evolve, because that's one thing I at least want to see with this version of Peter Parker is I at least want to see him grow into the character we know in the comics.
That's what I think you see though at the end of Spider-Man: Far From Home when he gets the new suit and he confronts Mysterio. Is I think that that is the birth of what we know as Spider-Man. I think that in the next movie, you're going to see him as a full-fledged Spider-Man. Because the thing with Homecoming is, and this is what I always like to refer to it as in my head, is that this is the clumsy Spider-Man movie. He does not have very much natural grace in Spider-Man: Homecoming, really at all.
Yeah.
There's a few scenes, but he is really clumsy.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, because I'm not going to sit here and pretend that he was at least like perfect in like when he first started out in the comics. I mean, he was kind of a clumsy dipshit at times.
Right, but I'm just saying in terms of like the Spider-Man we've had on screen, the ones we've talked about so far. Tobey Maguire. Okay, you had the learning curve for like the first 30 minutes of the movie, and then after that he's Spider-Man. And then with Andrew Garfield, okay, he's doing all this great acrobatic stuff by like halfway through the movie. With Tom Holland, I'm reminded like halfway through the movie you have that scene where he's swinging through like a suburban neighborhood, and I remember it's very small, but it's very interesting that they included it. I think it's a good eye for detail. Is he's flying across the houses, and then you see him land, and he lands on the gutter of the house instead of the roof, and he bends the gutter and then bounces off and lands on the ground. And I'm just thinking to myself, like, that is really, really unacrobatic to just like he just instead of landing on the roof, you land on the gutter and break it and then land on the ground. And then of course you see the scene where he has to run across the golf course. But that's kind of encompassing of like how he is through most of the film. Even in the fight scenes, the fight scene with Vulture, he's very clumsy in the way that he conducts himself because he doesn't know how to fight, and I kind of get that.
Yeah. And but what I have been hearing too is that apparently, they are when they make the fourth Spider-Man movie, they're gonna have like the Sinister Six in there.
Yeah, I've heard some rumors back and forth of a few different things that they're planning on doing. I mean, again, they set it up a little bit in Homecoming where you see like one of the when he has that whole scene on the ferry, which again is trying to play off of Spider-Man 2 with the train scene, which we unfortunately I think we skipped over, but everybody's talked about that scene to death anyway. But the whole thing with it is like when he goes up against those guys, the terrorist guys at first, it was the Mac Gargan is mentioned as one of the terrorist guys. It's like, okay, well, you're setting up Scorpion now.
He has a scorpion tattoo on his neck, as if we didn't get that already.
I didn't even notice that. I didn't even notice that when I watched it. That's kind of funny.
But I do like how they have Boz from Far Cry 3 playing Mac Gargan, to be honest. I actually do like that, because it's fucking Boz.
That's the same actor?
Yeah.
Damn, okay, I didn't know that either. You're teaching me a bunch of shit tonight. But that's the thing is they do try to set it up because then of course at the end you see the Vulture in jail and he gets everybody together. It's like, oh, we're gonna go get Spider-Man and stuff like that at the end of Homecoming. So like, okay, you're setting it up there. So that's one of the things that I do like about the MCU is that they do set stuff up for the long term. Like you'll see something in a movie and then like 2 or 3 movies later you'll see it actually pay off. Yeah. So that's one of those things that I think they do actually do very well. And I do hope that they actually do manage to pull off a Sinister Six movie that's actually good. And I would kind of like to see it kind of like what they did in Spectacular Spider-Man, the animated show, where he's in the black suit and he wrecks all of them.
Oh yeah, but then again, I heard that they're gonna try and force Captain Marvel in there. It's like apparently he can't take him on.
Yeah, well, the reason behind that I think was that the idea was that if you put Spider-Man in Captain Marvel together, then that makes her likable. So she's the straight man to his like jokey, snarky self. So
well, I mean, she does look like
supposed to be the idea, but it's all hearsay. So then again, I don't think they're going to be that
straight man. I mean, she does look like a straight man in the end of fucking Endgame.
Well, yeah, she's Carl Manverse. But the back to Homecoming is the things that I hate about Homecoming are the supporting cast. I don't
Yeah.
like any of them.
Ned's annoying.
Ned is at least kind of funny. He's kind of funny. He's mostly annoying, but he's kind of funny in certain scenes.
He's just
Like I don't
ganky.
mind. Yeah. I really hope they don't make him the Hobgoblin because he might actually take down a guy like that. If he does become the Hobgoblin.
Just
And he
imagine him
actually
on a
stated in
fucking.
an interview he wanted to do the Hobgoblin, which means he's going to have to lose a lot of fucking weight, or they're
Yeah, I
going to
was
have to use that CGI stuff they used on Chris Evans in Captain America: The First Avenger.
Yeah, because I was gonna
But
say, if he tries flying on a fucking glider, it's gonna, it's gonna start slowly
he's parking
descending,
that shit on the street. That thing's not even going to levitate.
or it's probably
But
just gonna skirt across the ground.
yeah, exactly. So I don't really like him. Marissa Tomei as Aunt May is not fleshed out at all. I don't like her.
She's just hot.
They don't give any mention really to Uncle Ben except in Far From Home. They have the suitcase. That's about it. Which I kind of hope that they change that in the third one, where they delve a little bit more into it and they get a little bit more character driven in that film, where we kind of get to see some stuff. But the whole thing with Homecoming is that a lot of people complain about, and I know you've mentioned this to me too, is that there's too much Iron Man in the film. The idea, the relationship between Spider-Man and Tony Stark.
Yeah. Just just let you guys know, in the comics, he's indirectly responsible for One More Day. So
that is true. that is 100% true because of the identity reveal. But the thing is like they set it up to a point where like I don't have a problem with it by the time we hit Homecoming, because I understand what they were trying to do. They were trying to make Robert Downey Jr. into the surrogate Uncle Ben, and I get that idea in the course of the movie, because I understand that, and I would have rather have had the Uncle Ben story, and then maybe the Tony Stark thing is a nice little companion piece to it. To like, okay, maybe that's why he gets so attached to Tony, because he lost his uncle, and this is like his new father figure. I could get that idea to an extent. But the relationship plays such a big part in both the Spider-Man solo films and in the other films that those characters appear in, like Endgame. When you look at Endgame, the whole reason why Tony Stark gets back into it and decides to research time travel is because he finds the photo of him and Peter Parker.
Yeah.
So I get the idea of them kind of adopting each other almost, where Peter's a surrogate son and Tony's the surrogate father, and it's that kind of a relationship. I don't have as much of a problem with it. What I have a problem with is them kind of editing Uncle Ben out completely, because I think it would make more sense actually if you had the Uncle Ben story, because then it would make sense of why Peter Parker wanted to latch on to him.
Yeah, because around the time when Homecoming came out, Tom Holland kind of threw out the idea of like bringing Tobey Maguire back to play Uncle Ben, that universe's version of Uncle Ben, which I think is a great.
I don't know if that would work. If they made him look old, if they gave him some makeup and stuff, yeah, it would probably work. But.
Well, then again, I mean, he is like around the close to the age. I think he's like close, age wise to Marissa Tomei. I think, and it would be a nice way of passing.
God, no, he's got to be way younger than that.
Wait, what?
Marissa Tomei is like, I'll look it up, but I think he's way younger than she is.
Well, then Marissa Tomei must be one hell of a MILF then, or an ALF.
No, she is.
An ALF, like anti like the fuck.
Yeah. All right. So Tobey Maguire is 44. I definitely know Marissa Tomei is a lot older than that.
Oh.
Marissa Tomei is 54, so she is 10 years older than Tobey Maguire.
Oh. Oh, fuck.
I was going to say, I remember her from My Cousin Vinny, but that was in the early 90s. But again, that's really my main gripe with the whole movie, is that his whole supporting cast is completely fucked up. Like, but the only thing save that movie for me is I like Tom Holland as Peter Parker and Spider-Man, and I really like Michael Keaton as the Vulture.
Yeah, because I mean, I like him as I do like him his his interpretation of Peter Parker and Spider-Man, but I like my complaint is just like how people the people keep saying how he's like the most comic accurate version of Spider-Man. I'm like, no, he is
Yeah,
not.
no, he's not.
If you've read a fucking comic book, you know that.
Yeah. But again, that's just kind of the kind of thing that like it always pops out of the woodwork with the MCU stuff. It's like people watch an MCU movie and they think they know everything about the comic books. It's just kind of the way that it goes.
Yeah, they think they know because they look at fucking comic panels and Google Images and read out random articles.
Exactly. But the reason why I like Holland is kind of the same reasons why I like Maguire. Holland is believable as a social outcast. I can believe him as like kind of the nerdy guy that people pick on. I can believe that. They show stuff like he still acts kind of like a little kid. They show like the stuff where like, all right, he goes out and he does certain things, but he still like plays around with Legos or something like that. Again, he's supposed to be like 14, 15. So it's like, all right, you're still a little bit of a kid. I get the idea. But then the other thing is that I like him as Spider-Man because we're seeing a Spider-Man that's essentially he's on a learning curve, and it's something that we haven't really seen to an extended amount. Where, like I said before, Raimi's stuff was like 20 minutes, and Garfield stuff was like 30 minutes maybe, and then you have Holland who's basically on a learning curve for like 2 films. He's really obviously he's not Spider-Man in Civil War. He's not really Spider-Man in Homecoming until kind of the end, and then you go to Infinity War, he's better, and then Endgame, and then by the time you get to Far From Home, he's actually kind of grown into the shoes, so to speak. But I like him as that, and then like I said before, Michael Keaton as Vulture is fucking amazing. That scene where he's in the car with Tom Holland and you see him pull the Glock out of the glove compartment and threaten him right before he's about to bring his daughter to Homecoming.
Yeah.
That is a perfect scene. And Michael Keaton is fucking terrifying. You legitimately think that Michael Keaton is going to shoot him in the head in the back of the car.
Yeah, the Batman shooting Spider-Man in the head. That's one hell of a movie.
That is so ironic. But and the other
they
like
say Batman doesn't kill, huh?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's even weirder if you think of him as Beetlejuice. But the interactions that Spider-Man has with Vulture are great in that movie. I think that's what makes the movie watchable. Like that's why I'd probably put at this point I would probably put that movie like number 4 in terms of my live actions.
Yeah, because I mean, what I was gonna say too is that spoilers for Far From Home. I do like the fact that at the end of Homecoming he keeps his promise of not revealing Peter Parker's identity, but that just kind of makes this whole promise pointless at the end of Far From Home, because I mean we all pretty much know what happens at the end of that movie.
Yeah, although I don't think we'll know the repercussions of it indefinitely until the 3rd film comes out or until they mention it in another movie. So I'm not 100% sold. Yeah, I'm not 100% sold if maybe they're just going to leave that as a stinger and then kind of sweep it under the rug in the beginning of the 3rd movie and try and keep it a secret again.
Thing from that shitty One Moment in Time comic, that the follow up to One More Day, where they retcon.
Here's what's going to happen. Here's what's going to happen.
Yeah, Doctor Strange.
At the beginning of Spider-Man 3, Marissa Tomei is going to get shot, and then Peter Parker is going to go around and try and find somebody to save her, and he can't. And then somehow the devil is going to show up.
Yeah.
You see where I'm going with this, don't you?
Yeah. So what are they going to say? What are they going to say? Oh yeah, well, you gotta sell your relation your girlfriend's your relationship with your girlfriend for fucking her life.
But with
Like they'll have
Homecoming,
Doctor
I
Strange in there to
enjoyed.
like do that stupid thing where like, oh yeah, if you step into this orb, then nobody will.
Uh,
Then people who step in this orb won't remember. I mean, won't forget that you're Spider-Man.
we'll change the time. Uh, but as far as Homecoming goes, like again, it's a movie with problems, but it's a movie that I think put certain things on the right track, and I like that.
Yeah, because I mean, like I was gonna say something about MJ or
Yeah,
Michelle or
go
whatever
for
the
it.
fuck
Go
you want to
for it. Yeah,
call her.
yeah. When they reveal that oh, I go by MJ at the end of the movie. That is a load of shit. And for whatever reason, Peter Parker has jungle fever in this universe.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Well, she's run. He's
Oh, he dates
falling
a
for a
black
bunch
chick.
of
He just
biracial
loves black
chicks.
chicks.
A
Yeah,
bunch.
no, for whatever reason. I mean,
I
more
mean,
power to you, man. But
I like some biracial chicks myself, but I mean, I'm just saying, dude.
yeah, no, I got no problem with it. But I'm just saying, like Peter Parker, just okay, cool, bro. But the the whole reveal with her at the end, we're like, oh, my friends call me MJ. It's like, no, no, no,
No, you're
no.
way too different. Like, not just saying because of your skin color. I'm just saying
Like
because
the
you act like the
personality is the
stereotypical
complete
loner.
polar opposite.
Like you act
Yeah,
like
the polar.
Ali
Well,
Sheedy.
but they do that with. And they do that with other characters too. Like, look at the Flash Thompson from that universe too. It's like the Flash Thompson from that universe is a joke,
Yeah, well,
like
he's like, well,
literally a joke.
I mean, people were like, well, you can't really expect him to be like a jock beating up Peter Parker randomly in high school. Well, I mean, yeah, true. I
No,
mean,
you
it's not
can't.
realistic, but still. Like, who
Well,
cares if it's realistic? It's a fucking comic book
you can
movie.
still see him as a bully. He can still be a bully. Bullies still fucking exist.
I mean, he's just a pretentious, like, rich douchebag in this universe that just can't, like, oh yeah, well, check out my
Yeah,
Instagram, bro.
yeah. Like I still like the idea of like okay, like he thinks Spider-Man is awesome. Like I still like that idea.
Yeah,
And there's still a few scenes in the movie that I think are really well shot. The scene at the Washington Monument I think is really good. Where he flies in through the window and manages to get the elevator and stuff like that, and stops that and saves all the classmates and stuff. I think that's a good scene. The action in the movie I think is relatively well choreographed, except for the end fight scene with Vulture, which is extremely anticlimactic and is mostly just him trying to hang on to a destroyed aircraft.
oh, did you see like the CGI where his like Vulture's claws like scratch the shit out of the wing? It looks fucking terrible.
Oh god! I mean, that was probably one of those things. Like, all right, we need to get it done, because apparently those guys get rushed a fair amount, especially on the end of those production schedules.
Because I mean,
Like,
it
look,
looks like
it's like the end of Black Panther. Like that looks like a cartoon.
yeah. And like what I was gonna say, oh yeah, we completely forgot that Shocker, or two Shockers were in this movie, and the Tinkerer was in this movie, and fucking Miles Morales' uncle was in this. One of the Prowlers.
Yep. Yep.
Well, I mean, the
Yeah. The
Prowler from the
Prowler.
Ultimate Universe.
Yep.
Who,
Yeah. Now, again, I see. Here's the difference, though, is that when they did that type of stuff in Amazing Spider-Man 2, they had already announced they were going to be doing all of these other films, so you didn't necessarily know. So you knew that they were doing that because they wanted to set all these characters up to come in next. With this, you don't necessarily know where certain characters are going to come in or if they're even going to come back. I mean, look at William Hurt as Thunderbolt Ross. He went 8 years in between films. He showed up in The Incredible Hulk in
Oh yeah.
2008, and then he didn't show up again until Civil War in 2016.
Which I'm still wondering how when the fuck the leader's gonna show up after they teased him at the end of Incredible Hulk.
Yeah, no, I'm assuming that guy just got brain cancer and died, and
His
that's
head
the write-off for
exploded.
that. Also, because that's a Universal movie, and they probably can't even get the rights.
Well,
The
they'll probably use him in the She-Hulk Disney Plus series.
you shut your mouth. The so that's Homecoming. Again, it's a film with flaws, but it's a film that I like. And
But I was
now we move on
gonna
to the most recent one.
But before I was
which is
that, I was gonna
something I,
say,
something I like.
but I was gonna say is that there were leaks of the Shocker's supposed costume in that movie, which I thought looked pretty neat. But I was really disappointed that he didn't even fucking use a costume in the movie. It was just like a plaid undershirt, like a plaid yellow undershirt with like a vest.
Yeah. And again, I think that might be something like, okay, if he shows up again, it'll be more advanced, or it'll have something else, and it'll have like a helmet or something on.
Yeah,
I think that they'll improve it.
because in the comics he basically just looks like a fucking bee.
Yeah, no, he looks like he's wearing furniture upholstery in the comic books. So that's Homecoming. So
And I was
let's
just
do the last
disappointed about
one.
the.
We'll do.
I was
Go for it.
disappointed a bit by the Shocker's gauntlets. Like it. Like
That
I
looks
was,
like a power fist. It looks like a pneumatic power fist.
yeah. Like I was hoping for like those the fucking the gauntlets that he wore, like the wrist
Yeah,
gauntlets that he has, like
yeah,
that
yeah.
blast the shit into shockwaves. But anyway, on to Far From Home.
Yep. So obviously, it's supposed to be it's a follow up to Endgame. So a bunch of the stuff that happened, mostly Tony Stark's death, but also spoilers if you haven't seen that. If you're one of the 3 people that haven't seen that movie, so
I haven't. I'm just kidding.
I know you're bullshitting me. So as far as that, Tony Stark's death, the whole repercussions from it, that's supposed to be the whole thing, and basically it's supposed to be like Peter's grieving process. I get that. I like that part of the movie. I think that's all right. And then the whole vacation thing. They try to kind of do in this the same thing that they did in Spider-Man 2, where he's kind of debating whether or not he wants to continue being Spider-Man. Like
Yeah.
midway through the movie after he meets Nick Fury and stuff on the vacation. And I don't buy it as much in this as I did in Spider-Man 2. I don't think it's done as well.
Yeah, I mean, but then again, Nick Fury turned out to be a scroll at the end of the movie, well, in a post-credit scene, so kind of, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, we're just not going to talk about that.
Oh, wait, because it's a
because
spoiler, or
because I choose not to remember.
because the scrolls are the good guys in this universe.
Yeah, that makes fucking sense. That makes complete fucking
because
sense.
we had to make like a Trump wall allegory in Captain Marvel because
I hate that fucking movie so much. I can't believe I sat through that fucking movie, even though I pirated the shit out of it. Again, this is one of this basically. It's kind of weird that like this movie I really really liked. I liked it a lot better than Homecoming.
Yeah, it's
but
better
I think
than
the reason
Homecoming
why
by
I
a
liked
mile.
it is better than Homecoming. But I think the reason why I liked it a lot better was because they toned down somewhat on the supporting cast to an extent, or at least the annoying as fuck ones, and you still had Tom Holland playing the character, and I think he still does a good job. I think he does a better job in this movie than he did in Homecoming. And Jake Gyllenhaal, I think, plays a really good villain. I like him in this movie. Plus, it's Sam Jackson's.
I mean, I was kind of disappointed that he wasn't, classic Mysterio, how he was a wannabe, special effects guy for, to work. He wanted to work in Hollywood and shit, but I guess they had to, tie him in with Tony Stark's background somehow.
Yeah, again, that's something that I kind of just attribute to the narrative of the films at this point of the divergence. But I still like the fact that he used the illusions. It wasn't like, he wasn't using magic like Doctor Strange, because that's what it looked like in a lot of the trailers. Was that because a lot of the symbols and stuff that he was using looked a lot like the Doctor Strange symbols that you see when he uses his magic. So I was thinking like, oh, is this like some like flunky from like the Doctor Strange like the temple or whatever that he trained at and all that shit, is that what they're going to make him into, or are they going to but it was actually an illusion thing. And the thing that I really really loved about this movie is the illusion sequences when he has Peter Parker in the illusions.
Oh no, I'd argue those are like the best parts in that movie.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree. I think those are the best parts of this movie is when he's in those illusion scenes, especially uh, before he realizes uh, how to use his spider sense in the middle part of the movie, and Mysterio tricks him into giving up like all of his friends. And it's like, okay, now I'm just gonna murder all your friends. It's like, oh shit. That was perfect. It was
Yeah.
perfect the way that was done.
Which I wanted to point out too. You know the Brad Davis character that tries to hook up with Mary MJ. I refuse to call her Mary Jane because she fucking
Well,
isn't.
she's not married. She's not Mary Jane. Literally,
That
she's not.
he's supposed to be like a
Yeah, I remember.
nod towards like the one of the guys that Mary Jane briefly dated in the comics in Amazing Spider-Man one number 188, where he like introduced like where Peter Parker was hanging out with Betty Brant, and then all of a sudden Mary Jane comes out of nowhere. She's like, "Oh hey Peter," like, "Oh yeah, this is my boyfriend Brad Davis," and he looks like just a jock
Yeah,
douchebag.
that's just a weird. I feel like that's just a weird thing. Like, hey, is there like an obscure character we can throw in here just for like so we have something interesting to talk about on the commentary track?
Yeah, because they appease like a minority of, well, I guess you could say a minority of comic fans that would know that.
Very minority of comic fans that would know that, but yeah, I mean, again, it's like I don't. Again, you know, I like that they cut back on the supporting cast to an extent. I like that they included Nick Fury.
And then
Kobe Smulders. I haven't seen her in a Marvel movie in like 4 or 5 years now as Mariah Hill, so it was kind of
what
good to
was
see
that
her
like?
back.
Well, I mean, she did appear at like the post credit scene in Endgame. I'm not Endgame, Infinity War.
Yeah, where she gets turned to dust, but like as an actual like film role.
Yeah,
Um, as opposed to a cameo. But
and then they
the
did
other thing,
bring in.
I like Sam Jackson as usual. He always has the quippy remarks. He had a couple of good ones from the trailer that bled in, like "Bitch, you've been to space."
Yeah,
That's just something that I expect Sam Jackson to say.
yeah, because and then they brought in that whole thing where the Ned Leeds character is dating this versions of
Yeah,
Betty
Betty
Brant.
Brant.
Like,
Yeah.
why do they make Betty Brant that way? Why? Like, it should have been Gwen Stacy.
Yeah, well, see, here's the other thing too that that somebody pointed out to me, which was very interesting, was at the at the very last scene in Endgame when they're all like going back to their various like places, like Peter Parker goes and meets Ned at high school again.
Yeah.
You see a shot of a girl walking on the left side of him. She's wearing a black and white shirt, and or no, sorry, she's wearing a black and white skirt with spider webs on it, and she's blonde with a black band in her hair, and people were saying like, "Oh, that's a nod
Oh,
to Gwen Stacy."
they're gonna do the ultimate version of Gwen Stacy.
No, she wasn't dressed up as a punk rocker. She wasn't. It wasn't that.
I was
She
gonna
looked like
say,
just like a regular schoolgirl.
I was gonna
But
say what in the later
uh,
movies they're gonna have her get killed by non
by
Cletus Cassidy
Ultimate Carnage.
Carnage, and then bring her back as a clone.
Don't put anything past them. But I think it would be interesting if they did introduce that character proper, as opposed to another shit one. But like I said, the strong points of the movie really fall with Tom Holland and Jake Gyllenhaal. And again, their interactions are really good. I like the back and forth between them because Jake Gyllenhaal does a great job at lying his ass off to Peter Parker throughout this entire film. Just basically trying to get him to lower his guard so he can get those glasses because he knows what the glasses do.
Yeah.
And I like the interactions between Peter Parker and John Favreau as Happy Hogan. Again, it's kind of that last connection he has with Tony. I can't remember this. And then the weird thing was like the romance, like the presumed romance between Happy Hogan and Aunt May. That was kind of weird.
Oh yeah.
I think it was just because Jon Favreau might have been hitting on Marissa Tomei on set, but uh, that was a little strange. But I think the real strength of this movie is the third act when he finally gets his shit together. He realizes he has to go save his friends. He makes the new suit, and again, you have that kind of scene where Happy Hogan is watching him. He's like he reminds him of Tony, and it's a really kind of interesting scene where it's like, okay, now he's Spider-Man. We get it.
Yeah. I mean,
But I really do like the final battle itself.
but I will say that I was kind of disappointed that, because I think everybody at first was kind of led on that he was, that one of the other villains is going to be Hydra Man, which Hydra Man is one of my favorite, Spider-Man villains, and I was kind of looking forward to seeing him in this movie. But then, more than I thought about it, I was like, no, 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 it's probably just going to be an illusion, like one of Mysterio's illusions. And then it turns out that it is. I'm like, God fucking damn it.
Well, I mean, they do open it up so that maybe they can, if it isn't him here, maybe it'll show up in the future or something like that. It's something that could happen, but
Yeah,
you know
and then
the
Molten. There's supposed to be Molten Man and Sandman, which
yeah, and they would say the elementals that are invading our universe
yeah, fucking
and they're illusions because it's Mysterio. But I also was kind of happy that they actually gave Mysterio the fishbowl look instead of like trying to modernize him at all.
oh yeah, like what they did in the Ultimate Comics, where they just kind of made him into a
Yeah,
fucking
where he just has like he looks like a discount Ghost Rider.
yeah.
That's just stupid. And somehow he kills the Kingpin again. I don't know how that happened, but other than tossing him off a building and down into a car. But the
Oh yeah,
the whole thing with that final fight is it felt like this makes sense. It's like Mysterio has worked himself to this point throughout the entire film. He has all the cards in his hand, and now Peter Parker just has to run through the gauntlet to stop him. And it's like, okay, I'm all in for this. This is good. I like the final battle where he's fighting all the drones. I think that's really good. I like the best part of that final battle is the corridor scene
oh yeah,
where when he finally learns how to use the spider sense.
about fucking time.
We don't. That's the thing too, is we don't even really see it until Infinity War when he's on the school bus. That's the first time that we ever see the hair stand up on his arms and stuff like that, and he finally has the spider sense, and we get it.
Yeah, because
Before that, they really never show it.
Because people would like to say that, just try to defend it to be like, oh, well, it's not fully developed yet. I'm like, bitch, it was already fully developed when it first showed up in Amazing Fantasy 15.
Yeah, it's not see. Here's the thing that I attribute it to is I don't think that it wasn't always there. I just think that he didn't know what it was. It's not like it wasn't there. It's like he just didn't know how to utilize it.
Yeah,
And I kind of get that. And that scene is perfect because he shuts the visors on the mask, and then you just see him run through shit. There's no music in that scene at all. It's just pure sound effects and grunting and smashing of metal, and that's all it is. And then by the time he gets to Mysterio, he has wrecked every single thing there. And then the perfect ending to that scene when Mysterio has one last trick up his sleeve. He's sitting there on the ground. He looks like he's about ready to keel over and die, and he's standing behind him with the gun cloaked, and you just see him grab up and grab the hand and move it out of the way right as he pulls the trigger. That is perfect.
yeah, that was actually a pretty good scene. I'm not gonna lie.
But I mean, I feel like that scene at the end of that movie, that if you have a superhero movie and you can't pull off the third act again, like Captain Marvel did, and you can't pull off the third act to a believable degree, and you can't make it seem like the hero is actually in danger, then you have failed as a filmmaker in that sense, because the audience should be on the edge of their seat for that third act. And when he gets into that corridor and you realize he's already gotten like lit on fire, he's gotten bashed, he's gotten shot. Uh, he probably has some busted bones and shit underneath that armored suit. And he's just kind of banged up and he's just done with it. And you realize that he still has like this one last thing to do. Like that's what you want in a scene like that. You want to be kind of invested at that point. Like, how the fuck is he going to do this?
Yeah. And the J.K. Simmons cameo.
Yeah.
At
the end there, the extra credit scene.
I mean, it was nice and all, but I don't know. It's just kind of ruined after the following scene.
The thing with the J.K. Simmons reveal is like I liked it in the sense that like I'm glad that he's back in some extent because we hadn't had a J.J. Jameson since the Raimi films.
Yeah, because there's no way that anybody can replace J.K. Simmons as J. Jonah Jameson.
Yeah, but the thing, like Amazing Spider-Man, we never even touch on the Daily Bugle or anything like that, at least as far as I remember. Maybe a little bit as like a website or something, but I don't think we ever really touch on it in depth. And we never meet J.J. Jameson, I don't think, in either of those two films. And now we have J.J. Jameson back. You updated the Daily Bugle a little bit because it's like an internet site now. So like, okay, I can live with that because I get it.
And you're not going to have any Ben Urich there because he was fucking killed in the Daredevil series, and not only that, he was working for the New York Bulletin in that one.
Yeah, but I think that they're probably going to nix that continuity they're going to bring that stuff over anyway. So you might see him. I think you might see him. You could see him or like Robbie Roberts or some of those characters pop up.
I mean, I wouldn't say that actually because I mean, I'd like to at least still believe that Daredevil at least exists in this universe. And
well, they might bring. That's the thing, though, is like the way those contracts worked out. They have to wait 2 years after the cancellation of the Netflix show to appear as those characters. So I have a funny feeling after that 2-year grace period is over, they're probably going to try and sign those guys back up if they can.
And then hopefully Iron Fist will wear his fucking costume for once.
Yeah, except for like 3 seconds in a flashback scene. But back to Far From Home is, as far as I'm concerned, I would put that as my number 3 for Spider-Man films. I'd probably put him as my personal preference: the first Raimi film, the second Raimi film, Far From Home, Homecoming, Amazing Spider-Man 2, Amazing Spider-Man 1.
What about Spider-Man 3?
Oh, I already forgot about that. Sorry, Spider-Man 3 can go right before Amazing Spider-Man 2, but right after Spider-Man Homecoming. Because at least it's funny in an ironic and horrible way.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, I partially don't blame you for forgetting it, but
I tried to forget it. I actively try to forget it.
But here's how I'd rank the live action movies. It would be number 1, number 2, and then it's either number 3 is probably either Far From Home or 3. Yeah, surprisingly 3, because at least I can at least sit there and laugh at 3 stupidity.
Yeah, it's funny in a dumb way.
And then it would be actually fuck it. 3 is Far From Home, then 4 would be Spider-Man 3, and then 5 is fucking Homecoming, then Amazing Spider-Man, and then Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Okay, so we're pretty much in agreement though on like the top 3 at least. We're pretty much on par with that. But
I mean, at least
thank you for.
I don't want it to be like too similar to your list.
I get that, but I mean, we both we both like the same things for the most part about the movies. The main points where we differ on are really the MCU films. You know, we're both in agreement kind of on the Raimi films and on the Amazing Spider-Man series. You know, I think that's why we talked so much about just the two films from the MCU. But you know, we've been on for 2 hours. I think that's enough Spider-Man for one evening for most people.
Well, we gotta talk about Into the Spider-Verse and the live action pilot for the 1970s show.
I'm gonna need to get really fucking high if we're gonna do that. But no, not tonight. Maybe we'll do an episode on Into the Spider-Verse some other time. And I'm not doing an episode on the pilot of the 70s series because I don't want to kill myself.
What about the Electric Company?
Oh, Jesus Christ. All right. So, with that, Vash, do you have any parting words?
Fuck bitches get high. I don't know.
Usually it's fuck bitches get money, but I guess if you get money, you're probably going to get high, so that makes sense. And for me, thank you, everybody that's listened, everybody that commented. You know, again, I'd like to try and do these things like semi-regularly when we get a subject or a person in. I'd like to do a few in the future, so I'll keep people updated on the channel. So if you like this, then there's more to come. So thank you very much for listening, and good night. Thank you.
Goodbye, everybody.
And goodbye.